Good Friday morning, everyone. Almost to the end of another work week. Hope you're doing well. Not a whole lot going on in Seahawks country at the moment. We're waiting, right? We've got a couple days until the Super Bowl. We got to get past the Super Bowl, then the off-season stuff. I guess you could say it opens up on, I think, the 17th is when teams can start re-signing their free agents. So we're waiting on that, less than a week away from that. And we're also waiting on the Sean Desai stuff. So right now there's a few things coming down the pipe, should be cleared up in the next week or so. But for the moment, we're kind of just waiting around to see what happens. Not a whole lot of movement. So I thought this would be a good time to revisit the old conversations around a Russell Wilson trade. So we did get a little bit of news a few weeks ago and reiterated a few days ago from Ian Rappaport. I have this Field Goals article up, but this is something that has been kind of rejuvenated every few days with another story, another rumor, another guy trying to get clicks, another team trying to throw their hat in the ring. I think you guys know what I'm talking about here. So there was a report a few weeks ago from Rappaport that Russell Wilson wants to explore his options this offseason, which I talked about that a little bit before. I don't know how that's supposed to be like news. I don't know who doesn't want to explore their options at any given time in their life. I think that applies to pretty much everybody in the world at any given time. But regardless, there is some stuff going on here. So I wanted to take this video to kind of reset on the Russell Wilson trade talks because, like it or not, we are headed towards a very active offseason with this kind of stuff. You're going to see different teams say, hey, we're going to make a play for Russell Wilson here on the trade market. Hey, we're going to make a run at trading for him. And you may even see something a little more concrete than explore his options at some point. And I'll say it right now. I've said it before, but it bears repeating. Get ready for it. Buckle down. Get ready to see a lot of stuff that doesn't amount to anything. You will probably know when it's really happening. It will be different. It will feel different. So when the stories start to break this offseason about Wilson, don't come onto my videos going like, oh my God, did you see this from da 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 da? No. Okay? Calm. So, reportedly, from guys like Ian Rappaport, Wilson is still potentially willing to waive his no trade clause. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say what I said at the end of the season, which is as of right now, I do not want to trade Russell Wilson. There are a couple different reasons why, mostly centered around the fact that we have decided to keep Pete Carroll. If we are going to keep Pete Carroll, then I want to keep Russell Wilson. I don't want to give Pete Carroll the draft capital that would come from a Russell Wilson trade because obviously at least part of the trade would be draft picks. And Pete has proven that he's not very good at utilizing those draft picks over the last 9 years with the average to terrible drafting that we've had. I don't want Pete to buy himself 2 to 3 extra years of failure with an excuse of, I traded my quarterback, you have to give me some time. And just in general, I also don't want him to be given the car keys to a team that should be rebuilding at his age, over 70 years old. He's not going to be able to do a good faith, honest rebuild because he doesn't have the time for it. He's old. He doesn't want to be coaching in 5 years, I'll bet. And even if he thinks he does, 5 years from now, he'll probably feel differently. So I don't want Pete Carroll to be in charge of a post-Wilson rebuild. I don't think he can do it. I don't think he's going to even be able to make a good faith effort to do it because of his age. And I don't want him to have the excuse of being bad for 2 to 3 years because we're doing a kind of soft on the fly rebuild where we lose our quarterback, but we've got these assets. He's probably going to try to flip the assets into players or just straight up get players, which I'll get to a little bit more in a second here, but it doesn't sound good to me. Now, beyond that part of the conversation, I'll say this as well. I do think that a second year in Waldron's offense is going to help Wilson. I do think that a year where he doesn't get injured will help Wilson. And I do think that it is, I don't want to say a given, but it is very reasonable to say that he will be better in 2022 with all these things being kept in place, because Metcalf very likely still going to be here. Lockett's going to be here. You have the ability to bring back at least some of the offensive line because some of it's still pretty good. You can bring back Everett, bring back Penny. You can keep a lot of the stuff the way that it was. Eskridge is going to be back. And that familiarity should help him. So I do think that if you keep Wilson for one more year, it may pay dividends in terms of how he plays as well. Now, I am under the impression here that as of right now, the idea of trading Wilson is apparently a no-go, a non-starter, because the team is not willing to do it. That everything that I've heard indicates that the team does not want to trade him. And if the team does not want to trade him, he's not going to get traded, even if he were to request a trade. Now, if he were to request a trade, then I would feel differently. If he doesn't want to be here, then I don't want to hold him here. I don't want a star quarterback who doesn't want to be here. I don't really want anybody here who feels like they're being held hostage. That's not healthy. That's not good. So if he requests a trade, sure. And on having said that, I don't want him to request a trade, because if we are going to trade Wilson, I want it to be on our terms. I don't want it to be on his terms where the team has to suddenly go, oh, crap, we need to trade Wilson now. Okay, what do we do? What do we do? No, I want it to be because we decided to do it. If Wilson forces his way out by demanding a trade, then that's going to imply that we were not in control of the situation. And even if I can somewhat empathize with Wilson's position of maybe he doesn't want to play under Carroll anymore, maybe he just wants a change of pace, maybe he just wants a fresh start, maybe he wants to go to a team with a more established offensive mind, I'm still a Seahawks fan, and I want what is best for my team. I don't care about Wilson if he leaves this team. At that point, he won't be part of this team anymore. I'm a fan of this team. And at the end of the day, parting with Wilson because he demanded it is not what's best for the team, because the team was probably not prepared for that situation and would probably not be able to get full value for him because the leverage would be weaker. And I'll also say this. If a team comes along and makes the right offer for Wilson, then I may feel differently. If somebody knocks our socks off with 4 or 5 first-round picks, or 3 or 4 first-round picks plus players, then I would probably have to say, you know what? It's an offer I can't refuse. Now, since the team isn't willing to trade Wilson, then the only person it could come from is Wilson himself. And Wilson had this quote at the Pro Bowl recently. So he says, hopefully I get to play in one place for a long, long time like those guys did. Those guys being Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger, because they just retired. Let me know, stop me if I'm being unreasonable here, but this feels wishy-washy to me. Okay, Wilson has a no-trade clause. If he wants to play in one place for a long, long time, then he can just say, I'm not going to get traded. And then he can be the final say on that. He can just put his foot down and say, no, I'm not going to get traded. I don't want to get traded. So him saying something like this, it does... You guys know I don't like clickbait. You guys know I don't like the people who just try to promote a crazy trade rumor just because they know it's going to get attention. But if you look at the quotes from Russell Wilson, if you look at some of the stuff that he says about his future, I'll say this. I think it is reasonable to suspect that Wilson wants to get traded, but he doesn't want to be the bad guy who asks for a trade, because asking for a trade in some ways I know not technically, not officially. In some ways, it is acknowledging that you're not living up to your contract. You're not the player that the team thought you were when you signed the deal. Because if you request a trade, you're kind of saying, I need more help, when you're supposed to be the guy carrying the team. So I don't think he wants to request a trade because he doesn't want to be that guy. But if you look at the way he words this stuff, when, by the way, it would cost him nothing to come out and say, no, I'm still here in Seattle. I plan on playing for Seattle for as long as they will have me, for as long as my contracts go. And I plan on winning in Seattle. He could say that, and then he could take it back later if there became a situation where he wanted out or needed to get out. So the fact that he continues to kind of gird his statements with these caveats like hopefully, or I hope, or we'll see what happens, or let's see how the off, these things that he says, I'm not a fan of the people who read too much. I try not to read too much into this stuff. I try not to assume what's going on in somebody's mind. I don't like to sit here and just assume that Russell Wilson hates Pete Carroll. It's hard to know that. We can't look inside this guy's brain. We don't know what he's really thinking. But looking at the way he words this stuff, it does kind of seem like you can at least argue that he wants to get traded. But he knows that if he does that, he's going to become the enemy. He's going to be the bad guy. He might not get what he wants, and then he's stuck here in a place that he already made publicly known that he doesn't want to be there. Like, I don't know. Even if it's not true, I do kind of wish he would come out and just put his foot down on these trade rumors. And then if things get ugly behind the scenes this offseason, then you come out and say, you know what, things have changed. We'll understand that. We might not like you if you request a trade later down the line, but I don't know. So anyway, as for the potential of a trade, because this video is kind of meant to reset on the trade rumors, Washington has recently surged to the top of the list. And let me say one thing to any fans of other teams out there that might want Russell Wilson. I know Tampa Bay is getting involved, the Vegas Raiders, who else? Maybe the Dolphins. Have a little bit of respect, okay? You are not trading for some above average safety or decent guard, okay? You are trading for a franchise quarterback. And I've been critical of him before, but go look at the Matt Stafford trade, go look at the Carson Wentz trade, and then go compare Russell Wilson to those players, okay? I was scrolling through a little bit of Twitter from Washington fans, the Commanders now, looking at some of the trade proposals they had for Wilson, and I'm hanging up on you guys, okay? I know you guys didn't call me, but I'm still hanging up on you. Have some respect. This isn't like a couple years ago when we were thinking about trading Earl Thomas. And Earl Thomas at that point was a safety who was getting older. And it made some sense for some people to think a third-round pick should be able to get it done here. It was defensible. I didn't agree with it, but it was defensible to think that maybe Earl's like worth a third and a fourth. Or 2/3. Russell Wilson, no. Okay? The asking price is going to be heavy. I saw some tweets that were like, oh, I'll trade anybody on this team to get Russell Wilson except for Terry McLaurin, Chase Young, and Montez Sweat. So all your good players, basically. You're only willing to trade bad players to get Russell Wilson. And that actually highlights an interesting point. If we trade Russell Wilson, you have to understand that team is probably going to have to give up some players as well. Unless it's a team like the Eagles or Giants that has a ton of draft capital in the upcoming draft, I don't think Pete Carroll's valuing a 2025 or 2026 first-round pick. I don't think that's moving his needle. He's old. He's trying to win now. In his mind, he's like, I'm not going to be here in 2026. I don't know if he thinks about things that way, but if he's being reasonable and objective, he probably shouldn't be here in 2026. He's going to be closing in on 80. So if you're a team like Washington, you better be ready to give up some of your players. Guys like Terry McLaurin, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, they're going to have to be on the table. And you're going to have to hurt yourself a little bit to bring in a franchise quarterback like Wilson. And with that statement, with what I just said being the case, I think that kind of really takes the legs out of any Russell Wilson trade talks because giving up players means taking away from Wilson's new team. When I spent a lot of time during the season last year talking about a potential Russell Wilson trade, I was doing it under the hopes that Carroll would be gone too. Because that way you could bring in a young or at least not old coach who would be willing to hunker down for a decade-long plan where you rebuild and then you put together a team that can win for 8 to 10 years. Kind of like what Carroll did when he first got here. But Pete is not that guy. If you're going to keep Pete, then you have to understand that he's old and he's thinking about winning now. So getting Washington's first round pick in 2024 or 2025, nah. I don't think Carroll places much value on that at all. I think that any Wilson trade is going to have to include some really good and probably very young players. You are looking at, if it's Washington, you are looking at guys like Montez Sweat, Chase Young, and Scary Terry. If it's a place like New York, you are looking at Kadarius Toney. You're looking at, man, the Giants don't have any good players. What the hell am I talking about? I seriously was just running through the Giants roster in my head, and I couldn't come up with anybody after Kadarius Toney. Maybe Dexter Lawrence. I don't know. If it's a team like the Steelers, you are going to have to look at giving up maybe Chase Claypool or maybe a young, promising offensive lineman like, God, I can't remember the guy they just drafted. But the point is, draft picks are only going so far with Pete. You got to give up players. And that's a problem for Wilson because when he goes to this other team, that team is going to have to give some stuff back that Wilson will no longer have to work with. I think that's a big issue for a potential Wilson trade. And if you take a look at some of these places that he could theoretically go, I'm just not seeing any reason why Wilson would so desperately want to go to those places that he would be willing to request a trade to go to. Like, New Orleans is obviously pretty much out because they've got nothing and they have no cap room. Washington has some good players, but Ron Rivera, is that any better than Pete Carroll for you? Are there any great offensive minds that you're super excited to work with over there? I'm not seeing it. And I don't think their receivers are better than our receivers. So I'm not seeing it there. Pittsburgh, they have a good defense, but they have a defensive-minded head coach. You're not working with some offensive guru there either. Cleveland, you want to go to Cleveland? Team that missed the playoffs last year, a team that their vaunted offensive line is starting to crumble already. So I'm just not seeing it coming together. You could stay in Seattle with Metcalf, Lockett, hopefully Eskridge, and a lot of cap room. That's probably better than any other place you could go. So I think that sums up the Russell Wilson trade conversation as of right now. I don't want to trade him unless he specifically demands a trade or if a team comes at us with this insane offer that we can't turn down. But realistically, I'm not seeing the team that can make the right offer to get Wilson because Carroll is going to prioritize winning now. And in order to win now, you need to give up players. And a team giving up players hurts their ability to compete in the now with Wilson. So that's where I am right now. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And as we hear the rumors pick up, just understand that people are just trying to get attention this time of year. I respect the hustle. I respect the grind. But that doesn't mean I'm going to give it too much attention. So those are my current thoughts on the Russell Wilson trade rumors, if you can call them that. I will say I wish Wilson could put his foot down a little more on these trade rumors than he currently is. He could come out and say something a little more definitive than he has, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be asking out. It doesn't seem like he's interested in doing that. It doesn't seem like that's the kind of guy he is. I don't see anything going on here right now. I just got to be honest. We'll see where it goes, but those are my current takes on the Russell Wilson trade situation. Let me know what you guys think down below. See you guys later today. Peace out. Go Hawks.